Welcome to another Buckeye Review update. My name is Dr. M. Mike McNair, and I'm the publisher of the Buckeye Review. And so we have listeners, followers, and subscribers all over the country. And so I know people are probably at this point a little bit nervous or sick and tired of what's going on with the election. So whether you're on the side of being nervous because you're afraid of the left, and you're nervous because you're afraid of the right, or you're indifferent, and so you just turn off the TV because you're tired of the lies that are coming on television. I just wanted to at least give you an update from the perspective of the Buckeye Review that today is still 2 days before election. It's Sunday. Souls to the polls will be occurring today in several cities. Certainly in Youngstown, I know it's happening, but I know it's happening in other cities. And so that's an important part of what we do, is to at least cast our vote. That's really, really important. I want to encourage you to do that. But I also want you to think about what will happen after the election is over. Because if you pay close attention, you'll notice that each side feels like it's the end of the world will happen if we lose or if we win, or if we lose, the end of the world will happen. Obviously, that's not true, but depending on how close you are to it, you feel like a little bit exercised about it. So after the election, it's going to be important to think about why it's important to pay attention all the time to what's going on in our politics, in our government, in our schools, and in our society. Our culture is very, very important, and what we do, right? Because people throughout these barbs like culture wars. I don't know what that is. I think I know what they're talking about when they say culture wars. My tribe against yours, I guess that's what they're saying. But America has a very unique culture. And it's kind of melded together, and the goal of some people is to keep us in silos. I think the goal of us here at the Buckeye Review is to communicate, to educate, and to motivate. So what's going on today with Souls to the Polls, for example, you may have heard my interview with the chairman of the Community Mobilization Committee, Reverend Simon. The goal is to educate and mobilize voter registration and voter mobilization, registration, education, and mobilization, getting people to the polls. And in that process, people get caught up in, get more information about, oh yeah, it is important to vote for Supreme Court judges. And they realize why it is important to vote in local elections as well. We have local elections in the 33rd District and the 59th, 58th District. I want to say thank you to the candidates who've reached out to the Buckeye Review and through our resource to reach out to our subscribers. Robert Hagan did, so did Eric Ongaro and Tim Ryan. So those are people who cared enough about you to send their message to you through the Buckeye Review. So I want to say thank you to them, but more importantly, let you know who is thinking about you. Now, what's going to happen after the election? I think this is the important thing. I woke up this morning thinking about, the verse in Galatians 6:9 that says, "Be not weary in well-doing, for in the end you shall reap if you don't faint," right? So we have to be about our business all the time. And it's a lot to pay attention to the small details of government and politics, but it's important. But if you don't have time because you're working, you have 3, 5 kids or whatever, then you need to be, and we need to be, in a nurturing circle where others you trust, people you trust is paying attention and can give you good information, right? So whether it's through your church, through your community organization, through your Divine Nine, through your social club, there's a lot of stuff going on, and a lot of places where people can connect, because everyone doesn't go to church. Even though we as African Americans, we go to church in larger numbers than most other people. And even though that is true, there's still a large number of us that don't. So church is important, but other social organizations, clubs, social groups, fraternities, sororities, all of that's important because there you find a place where you can get encouraged information and you know and not have to depend on just one source for news, information, and empowerment. Okay, I wanted to say that and make that point important because after the election, that's going to be important. But it's still time before the election for you to cast your vote. A vote is like a prayer to the government or to the leadership. Say, look, care about me. So people are talking about inflation, for example. The reason I wanted to mention after the election is because inflation is not an administration issue, per se. It's on the watch of the administration because it's happening, but inflation, like the economy, is cyclical, right? So if you look at it over time, things change, right? Things will change. Internationally, you have China doing stuff. You have North Korea threatening South Korea, China threatening Taiwan, and of course Russia threatening Ukraine. And with each one of those things, and that's just a few. I mean, I didn't talk about Saudi Arabia and the oil or other things that impact inflation and costs, but I wanted to mention it because inflation is a global situation. And so I don't think it matters who is in office. You can't blame who's in office necessarily for inflation, right? There's something that's going on all over the place, and we have to pay attention to that. The same thing with crime. Oh, crime is a big deal. Well, yes, it is, but guess what? Crime is down. But when you hear people say it's up, it's to spark fear in people to think, oh, they're coming to get me. You know what I mean? Crime is a problem, and something needs to be done about it. But just like with inflation, our individual input into it becomes the most important thing, right? A lot of inflation is driven by greed. People raise prices because they can. They say, oh, people are saying inflation, let me raise my prices and I'll still get paid. And that's happening, and you can see it in the profits of large corporations and even in small ones. So people are making more profit because they're charging more and we are paying it. So our choice is to choose not to pay it if we can afford to not pay it, or make wiser choices with our own individual purchasing power. But the other side of the coin is, in things like gas and food, we have to eat and we have to drive. So therefore, we still care about that. But I want you to think about it in terms of this is not a minute, tiny thing that can be fixed because I voted for the Republicans or I voted for the Democrats. It's not going to change the day after the election, right? So what will change? I think what needs to occur is for us to all pay attention to what Congress and elected officials locally are caring about. Are they caring about you? And you can tell by their decisions. Every decision, every policy decision, every legislative decision is a moral choice. And that's why you may have heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. I was disappointed when the child tax credit was not made permanent because although it only lasted 6 months under the current administration, because none of the Republicans and not even all the Democrats supported the reauthorization of that child tax credit. Well, in the meantime, in those 6 months, child poverty in America was almost eliminated. It was like almost completely, it wasn't completely eliminated, but it was almost completely eliminated. So children's poverty is important. Do we care about our children? We say we do, but the policies that say, I'm going to withhold this money from children for the better benefit of billionaires, which is literally what happens. It's not necessarily a binary choice, but it's cleared by the trend. It's not one that happened the day before or the day after the election, but it's a trend. So during the pandemic, for example, there were 500 new billionaires created. And if you're in the fever of Powerball, people are rushing, buying lottery tickets because there might be one billionaire. There might be one billionaire. If you pay $2 or $3 and get a ticket and you earn 1 in 292 million and win, you'll be a billionaire. The truth is, the policies that have been laid out for the last 50 years have clearly benefited the wealthy, and the wealthy get much more wealthy by not working at all, by just twisting a few screws and benefiting from some policies that have been made to favor them. And 500 new billionaires were created during the pandemic. It was like one every 17 hours or something like that. Now, what did they do for that money? Well, they just benefited from the policies that were made safe for them. Not hating on billionaires. I'd love to be one day. I don't think I will be. That's not why I'm here. I'm here for us to understand the trend of what's going on in Congress and in policies that are made. So if all of those billionaires can be created, how come we couldn't take care of children? Like 1 or 2 of these billionaires could eliminate child poverty. But the truth is, a handful of senators and congressmen in our government could eliminate child poverty. You see what I'm saying? Child poverty is bigger than, saying, hey, we got 500 new billionaires, and I don't know who they are, and they're not coming to your rescue, nor are they coming to mine. I'm not saying that we need rescuing, but some of our children do, right? So look at the trend of what goes on with money. I like Roland Martin's new book called White Fear. Roland Martin, get the book. I encourage you to get the book because it's talking about the fact that in America, it's about money. It's a money conversation. So money for the billionaires, money for the children, So I want us to pay attention to where the money goes. The same is true with healthcare, right? It doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. We all need healthcare. And the number one reason that people are in debt and bankruptcy in America is because of medical debt. Everyone needs health care. You shouldn't have to have gone to a certain school or worked a certain job or had a certain level of education to be healthy or to have access to adequate health care. And every time a decision is made about health care, we need to pay attention to what's going on with health care. And the fact that right now, our healthcare system, prior to 2009, when the Affordable Care Act was signed, prior to then, our medical system was a market-based system. What do I mean by market-based? That means supply and demand. It's profit and loss, right? Well, when, and then unless you're on Medicare, which says, okay, it was a quasi-market system, and they put some laws on the books to keep the prices high because the government will pay for it. There was a decision made in 2010. 2010 is after or during the Obamacare discussion. And I'll say the Affordable Care Act to not negotiate drug prices. Now, why that makes sense? It doesn't make sense because Walmart is the biggest retailer in America. They negotiate prices. That's why you have low prices at Walmart. And so why is it that we can't negotiate drug prices, right? The government, the largest buyer through Medicare and Medicaid of drugs, can negotiate prices. You would get lower prices. Well, who am I talking about? I'm talking about us because we, the public, our tax dollars are paying for it, right? And so when a decision is made to say, we won't negotiate, really, who is it benefiting? Well, it's benefiting the big pharmacy companies, and there's some billionaire or millionaire legislators or former legislators that are in place that said, I'll cut this deal for you so you can get paid, I'll get paid. Meanwhile, later for all of those blokes who need health care. So think about health care. Think about the economy. This is after the election. Think about our children. This is all important, right? And I don't know if I was finished my thought about Roland Martin's book, White Fear, because he talks about any conversation in America is a money conversation. If you follow the money, then you'll find out what's really behind. It's not really it's like, about the morals of, whatever the situation is. It's more that who is getting paid. So I can't think of the book right now, but I was looking at C-SPAN the other day, and there was a book review about a guy talking about why is it that with all of these commercials or with the back and forth on these elections, so much money is being poured in, and the razor thin margins in half a dozen or 9 states is so. Why is it so close when it seems like the ideas are poles apart? And they talk about, the messaging on the left or the messaging on the right. He said it's neither. It's the dark money that's being poured in to the election. So what do I mean when I say dark money? Dark money is when you can pay for a message and you don't have to say who it is. If we don't know who's paying for it, then we don't know why they're paying for it. And if we even knew who, we might be able to guess why. But there was a Supreme Court decision made. I think it was 2013 or 14. Citizens United. It's called Citizens United, which basically says a corporation is a person, and you don't have to say who you are. If you can put all of this money into a political action committee and not say who you are. It's like you can throw rocks and hide your hands. Well, that's a policy decision. And it was made by the Supreme Court of the United States. And now, since that has occurred, billions of dark money is being funneled behind a lot of these candidates. And I'll say, for example, we're in Ohio, so behind J.D. Vance, for example. But I don't want to color my hand with a political lens. Just say dark money. Dark money is you don't know where it's coming from, and you know it's coming, and we are picking up the pieces on the other side. So anyway, I just want you to pay attention to healthcare. I want you to pay attention to where the money is going, where is it coming from. We will try to keep you informed. I appreciate our subscribers, who subscribe to the Buckeye Review so much. And I should come on every other day just to read you an article from the Buckeye Review, because, the United Returning Citizens had a wonderful ball. The Sojourn to the Past had an awesome nonviolence week. And there's so many things going on. We talked about, the bus and the Souls to the Polls. I wanted to mention that. But before I close, I want to mention an invitation to a book discussion, right? I host a book club. Some of us host a book club discussion every week. And we choose a book, we read through it, we chat about it, we learn a lot, and we pray, we mourn, we cry, we laugh, because we're learning a lot of things. Just like with the whole political thing, when trying to erase history, that's another thing that's going on, that will go on after the election. Let's erase history. Let's not talk about real history. Well, there's a book that my pastor wrote. Bishop Joseph Johnson of the House of the Lord. And I'm looking for the flyer, and I'll hopefully maybe just put it up on the screen so you can see the cover of the book. It's called The African American Struggle for Identity. Our Struggle for Somebodyness. And it's a really great read, and we're going to do like a community discussion about the book. So you can pick up the book, The African American Struggle for Identity by Bishop Joseph Johnson. If you pick up the book, read it, It's not very big, but it's very deep, or it's very affirming to our identity as African Americans. Clergy members, you will want to be there. Leaders, church leaders, Sunday school teachers, you need to be there. You need to read the book, not be there. You need to read the book. Get the book, read the book. And we'll do some other announcements and have on November 22nd, we're going to have a virtual discussion with the author. So if you can pick up the book, read it, send me an email. We'll let you register for the Zoom virtual discussion of the book with Bishop Johnson on November 22nd. So I wanted to give you a little bit of update. Think about the verse in Galatians 6:9 that says, "Be not weary in well-doing, because in due season you will reap if you don't faint." So I don't want anybody to faint or be withered and wearied over the back and forth about what's going on. But I want you to be aware to the point where you're paying attention to the money, paying attention to the policy discussions, and paying attention to who's being helped and who's being heard by our leaders. This leadership discussion is very, very important. The fact that our Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's husband, was attacked was really sad. But when you see the response to it, it's even sadder. So thank God that he is on the mend. But there is reason for us as a nation to be concerned about the rhetoric, because the vitriol has come to a point where violence becomes excused and people are numbed and jaded to the things that are being said that are clearly not true. So where is the solution? Clearly it's not at the White House. It's not at the courthouse. It's not at the municipal building. It's not in government. It's in people of faith who carry the gospel. The real gospel, because the real gospel cares about real people, right? Cares about the poor, cares about the stranger, immigrants, and cares about justice. Notice I didn't say social justice. People of faith care about justice, biblical justice, righteousness. And it's not going to come as a flash from the sky. It's going to come from your heart and from mine. And that's loving, caring enough for one another, not only to pray for one another, but to encourage one another with good information, good voting, good policy making, good holding people accountable, and good care for one another. So I just wanted to give you that quick Buckeye Review update. What happens after the election? Pay attention. Pay attention. We'll be back to talk to you soon. This is Dr. Mike McNair from the Buckeye Review. I love you. God bless you. See you after the election. But don't forget to vote.